Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Feeding Curiosity. Today's episode, we're back talking about the moral reasoning or psychology of moral reasoning. So, part one, we basically did the foundations of it, who are the prominent figures, philosophers, and their ideas, and then some critiques on those ideas. And now I'll pass it off to Joe to give the introduction to what this next part will be, and then we'll jump right into the PowerPoint.
Sure. So last time we talked a lot about Lawrence Kohlberg and his moral stages of development. And then we noticed some of the things that he got wrong or that he couldn't account for. One was that he is a rationalist. His philosophy is a rationalist philosophy. And so it takes the stance that individuals are in peer groups and they derive moral lessons from those peer groups. And by taking the perspective of their peers, and then abstracting out moral principles that transcend even their culture. All right. So they end up playing in a rational, abstract domain. But what that neglects is the idea of intuition. There are intuitionist moral thinkers that we'll get into in a moment. But also it lacks uh, not it lacks hierarchical moral relationships. Because if I take your perspective, it is easier for me to take your perspective if you're my peer because I understand where you've been. I'm walking a mile in your shoes, but I have a harder time taking the perspective of my boss. I don't have his job. I've never had his job. I have no idea what it's like to have his job. And so, largely, what we get from Kohlberg is a missing of the hierarchical relationships and intuitionist relationships. So, we need a way of accounting for those. We did that by trying to define a pragmatic definition of truth that emerges out of a process ontology. And a process ontology is the idea that everything's constantly in flux, that everything is moving, that change is the most fundamental thing we can say about reality. And then to say any truth statement about something that's changing all the time means that you're trying to actually say, not a statement so much about reality as it is in this exact moment, so much as you're trying to say something about something that is stable across that change. Anything that I say that's true needs to remain true tomorrow,
It's
and
almost
that
like
means
looking
that
for a constant if you were like taking this as a science.
right, it's looking for a constant, and so that a any how do you say this? That instead of having something like an objective truth, meaning an object that is true and you can describe it and it remains true forever. Instead, you have approximate truths that are hierarchically arranged. They can be more or less true depending on how long it remains true under this constant changing dynamic. And so, for example, gravity is a serious truth. It is constantly around, and just about anything you can say about gravity continues to be true forever. But so is something like um, the phenomena of color. And this is more available than something like any true statement you might say about a chair, because that same chair might decompose in the time between now and when you read me right about chair, right? And so then under this constant flux, you get a pragmatic definition of truth, and a pragmatic definition of good would be those things that are in some sense good for the species or good for a group of people over the longest period of time that remain stable goods under a constant change. And that leads you to realize that that thing that remains, how would you say, that thing that remains slowly changing enough, that's tempo is slow enough, that is stable for long enough, becomes like an object, like a feature of the environment that you adapt to. And so we account for it, we
Mm,
embody it, right? We adapt to it. It becomes a part of our biology. And out of that, is what emerges moral foundations theory. Now, I don't think Jonathan Haidt has put it that way. He might think that way, but he hasn't put it that way. I'm adding to it and saying that once you recognize that you can adapt to these um, constant goods across the development of human species, then those things that adapted to that can be exapted or utilized for moral reasoning purposes. Okay. And
Cool.
there are, according to Haidt, 5 or 6 of these moral foundations. So these are structures in our biology that can be utilized to, I suppose, help with human flourishing, to help move us forward. Okay. So moral foundations theory, the creators are guys like Jonathan Haidt, Craig Joseph, and Jesse Graham. Its innovations are largely that it fits in an evolutionary framework. You'll notice that process and ontological view fits really nicely with evolution because evolution is a process. Um, it counts for intuition, that these moral foundations, these embodied recognitions of our social circumstances, are intuitions. They produce intuition. It counts for morality beyond care and fairness, which was a big problem with Kohlberg.
Mm.
So the Hobbesian view, it counts for the Hobbesian view in a way that um, that Kohlberg just did not. He's more of a Rousseauist, whether that's a purpose or not. So, quote, we do moral reasoning not to reconstruct the actual reasons why we ourselves come to a judgment or came to a judgment. We reason to find the best possible reasons to why somebody else ought to join us in our judgment. Right? That the actual explicit reasoning is sort of what is it, the cream on the cake, right? It's intuitions and emotions behave as low resolution forms of cognition, appraising situations in relationship to a goal and whether it helps or hinders one's advance. That's coming out of the appraisal theory of emotion, that all of your positive, negative emotions are derived from their relationship to a goal, and that bad emotions signify, oh, this is not going well. And good emotions signify keep doing that. Dopamine seems to play that way, and that dopamine, when I go through a series of behaviors in order to get a piece of cake and then eat that piece of cake, dopamine is released and that reinforces the behaviors that come before it. And it's something like saying that worked really well. Let's keep doing that thing that works well. Now that can be hijacked by cocaine, and then you could just be pursuing cocaine all the time and then become an addict. It can reinforce itself. That reinforcement process is what creates the addiction. But we'll move on to that. So reasoning occurs post hoc. Intuitions are the branches from which the leaves of moral reasoning grow. Shake the branch and the leaves rattle. So you'll get a lot of that's a guiding metaphor throughout this whole thing, is that a lot of these experiments will go to the intuition, which is like the branch, and they'll activate that intuition, that foundation, that moral foundation, and then watch how the reasoning changes. So you shake the branch, leaves will rattle. Okay, the first one is care and harm. So I have a couple really nice representative paintings or sculptures up here of this. Care and harm comes out of a lot of the kind of attachment theory stuff, the dyad between attachment figure and usually mother and child. And so you see like the Pieta from Michelangelo, kind of beautiful recognition of this connection. But then you can have, I had to put this up there because it's inverse. Pieta Occulta by Roberto Ferri, which is this painting that reverses everything in this pretty remarkable way. Instead of the mother, the Pieta, right? She's offering up her son to the world, right? I mean, he's passed away and she's mourning him in this. It's a tragic thing, but she's tragically passing him on, which is the good mother. You have, instead, you have the terrible or consuming mother who is not so much resigned, but content in some sense with the situation that she's in as her son clings to her, right? So he won't leave. He won't go out into the world to adventure. And you can see that's turning him into stone. And so he's becoming stagnant and brittle. If you notice, there's actually stones that are coming off of him, pieces that are breaking off. So he's turned to stone. He's stagnant. He's become brittle in because of his relationship with her, which she in fact has enticed him into, just as he's agreed to be a part of this. So they're both at fault. And there's roots in the background. And so in the background, you can see nature's tendrils are coming up. to undo everything, right? So there's constant danger in a lot of fairies' work. It's really interesting. Okay. So it's the base care and harm foundation is the basis of social organization. Humans have a long developmental period in which we are extremely vulnerable. To compensate for this, we developed attachment. So part of one of the big things that interacts with that is oxytocin. So oxytocin, just to give a kind of general sense of what this is released during sexual behavior, nursing, labor, and uterine contractions, for example. So it has a lot to do with creating attached relationships, fostering that attachment, and they'll actually treat people with attachment issues using oxytocin. Administering oxytocin to juvenile, naive, which means a virgin, female rats induces maternal behaviors. So that they'll actually have like a bunch of little baby rats that are not their own. And if they give her, and she'll have never had sex, so she doesn't know what to do with these children, presumably, right? So is it, and then if it's a learned behavior, then this wouldn't happen. But if it's a innate behavior, when you give her the oxytocin, she'll go into mother mode and start mothering all these things. So there's an innate section here that you can activate using oxytocin with these.
There's a mothering circuit in the brain.
That's exactly right. Oxytocin increases the sense of attachment in insecure attached style adults. So there you go. You can use a similar thing happens in you. That's just one piece. That's just one neurotransmitter that's associated with attachment. Attachment theory came out was the result of John Bowlby, I think was his first name, and Mary Ainsworth. The sensitivity of mothers and other attachment figures forms an infant's impression of the world. This is one's internal working model or representation of relationships as such, which differentiates over time. Infants with more sensitive mothers are less fearfully reactive than those with insensitive mothers. So if you have a strong initial relationship where the mom will attend to the infant, the kid will actually they'll react less fearfully to things, right? Because they know they have a secure base to rely on. They have a secure home, secure place. Maternal sensitivity rating and paternal sensitivity play at 1 year old. So the dad seems to be more of a go out and encourage you into the world, and the mom is you have a safe place to return to. This predicts the 10-year-old internal working model. So there's a longitudinal study. So 10 years later, the child will still have a similar internal working model. Maternal caregiving at 18 months predicts attachment style 20 years later. So ain't that something? So this definitely has some pretty remarkable long-term impacts. And attachment theory is like well worked out. I don't actually meet a whole lot of people that are working on it exactly, in part because it's kind of taking as canon now. Pretty interesting. It came out of a Freudian background too, which the Pieta Occulta, that is the Oedipal complex that Freud was talking about. That dynamic. It's like perfect. It's a perfect representation. Okay. Here we go. So here's some cool stuff that I came across. This is from Feeney, 2016, 1990. She wanted to, I think, was looking at kind of love styles and was using a lot of the Greek language for all the different kinds of love to talk about these attachment styles. So somebody who you can either be in attachment theory, you can either be securely attached, so you have a healthy relationship, the attachment figure, their secure base, and so on. Or you can have one where you don't believe that your attachment figure will be there to help you. So this is insecure attachment base. And so the world even begins to look like something insecure. And we'll get to that in a moment. There's two different kinds of, actually there's three, but there's two main kinds of insecure attachment. One is avoidant and one is anxious. You can think of avoidant as not bothering with attachment at all. Like, forget it. I'm out. I'm going to rely on myself. Or anxious, which is like clingy. Don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. Right? Like, stay here, make me feel secure. And so she talked about these different love styles, and you have, for a secure person, they have eros, so this passionate love, and they'll have agape, this kind of sense or selfless love that the Greeks talked about. where avoidance seems to do with ludus or this game playing love. I've met people like this that they're sort of entice you in because they kind of want it, but then they withdraw. And they entice you in and then they withdraw. And it's because they want you, they want to be close in some sense, and they want the benefits of feeling secure, but they also don't trust you to be to be there, to be something stable they can rely on. That in some sense you're dangerous. So they want you, but you're dangerous. Where the anxious type will be manic, mania, possessive love that they're trying to hold and cling forever. So this extends in a more abstract way, well beyond just your relationships with individuals, which is why I say that an internal working model is not just a representation of relationships. It's a relationship with a person. It's something like relationships as such, including your relationship to God or a political system. So, for example, um, people with secure attachment will have a correspondence style relationship with God. So they'll like check in. How you doing? It's good to talk to you again. Blah 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 blah. Where insecure attachment types will have a compensatory relationship where they're using it as something like a omnipotent attachment figure or this perfect foundation upon which they can rely. So the anxiously attached people will cling to God. Over a 4-year period, anxiously attached women were more likely to convert and report religious experiences than securely attached women. Avoidantly attached people were more likely to be agnostic or atheist. So isn't that interesting?
Wild.
In the political systems, so in political belief, anxiously attached people will be more authoritarian or interested in authoritarian beliefs because they want to cling to a stable state, right? Not as just a state of mind. They're trying to
That sounds like
produce a state.
Hobbes.
It's yes, very much Hobbes. It is so Hobbes, which is amazing, right? And
Crazy.
right, extreme external reliance is what they're doing. And then an avoidantly attached person will be interested in social dominance, that they want to climb up that hierarchy constantly. And that's this form of extreme self-reliance. I will protect me, right? Is the kind of attitude.
Hmm.
Fascinating. Now, none of these studies are representative of everything, and I'm sure that there's more studies that or probably some out there that contradict it or something, but it should give you a general sense of the picture.
Yeah.
So you can activate this care harm thing in a couple different ways. So it's formed by this parent-child relationship, right? And cuteness behaves as a social stimulus, triggering either care or play. So that's kind of theorizing by Sherman attachment. So you can imagine that cuteness is the thing that activates your care or harm foundation that begins to shake the branch. And when it's later abstracted, pattern deviation aversion, one's reaction to known geometric patterns being broken, predict greater condemnation of harm. So I put up the little arrows there.
Mhm.
Right? It's annoying. It's really annoying that those are
Especially
not in
for
place.
especially for you, Joe.
Oh yeah. Well, I have a different reaction. So this is interesting because the fact that this is activating condemnations of harm, right? So this care foundation is that what's going on there is that some number of people will look at this pattern and say, you heard it.
Really?
Right, that's not what they'll say, but that's like the metaphor. That's the in a
Oh,
deep sense, is that the reason that it's activating their care foundation is because they, in some deep unconscious sense, think that somebody hurt the pattern.
that's wild. I don't
Isn't
get that.
that
I don't get that reaction either. I just want it organized.
that's
I
that's
just
not really yeah, right, we'll get to that one.
this is not
Because
one of the
that study has 2 major findings, and the other one is applicable to a different foundation that we'll get to in a moment.
sweet.
Uh, so care harm in some. And an adaptive challenge, which is to protect and care for children's original trigger was suffering, distress, or neediness expressed by one's child. Current trigger, things like puppies are cute cartoon characters, right? Or a broken pattern. Characteristic emotions are things like compassion. Its relevant virtues are caring and kindness. This is taken right from The Righteous Mind. All right. Fairness and cheating. We've got another really beautiful painting that I love, The Allegory of Justice by Giorgio Vasari. This was actually commissioned, so he was asked to do this. And it's probably one of the most sophisticated pieces of symbolism that I've seen. So the bare-breasted woman there, she's justice. The bare breasts is goes way back um, to the Amazons. So the mythology of the Amazonian women was that they'd have a single breast out, or that they would cut off one breast, and that was so that when they knocked their arrows, they could come back and it wouldn't. They could let go of the arrow without the string hitting their breast. So they would actually cut off one of them. Hypothetically, it's not actually clear that the Amazonians never existed, and they might have actually been to some degree an insult about the Persians. That the Greek men would be like, we're calling all of the Persians women. It's just hilarious.
That sounds like something the Spartans would come up with just for
Yeah,
propaganda's sake.
right. And so I don't know if that's true, and there's debate about this, but it's funny. Um, but it's also associated with justice is associated with Athena, and so you can see she has a warrior's helmet on here. That's very Athenian. Um, and so this is kind of an Amazonian warrior attitude behind the idea of justice. But on top of that, she's being presented a woman, a young woman who's holding these doves, and that young woman is a representation of truth. And so she's about to anoint truth with a crown of laurel or leaves here. And her truth is being presented by an old man with wings and a hourglass on top of his head. So time flies. He's got the hourglass, right? So there it is, right? Bang, there's the image. I love that you reacted like that, because that is exact. It's like, oh, click, right? It makes perfect sense. It's like this old man, father time, is time flies. He's got the thing on his head, and he's time presents justice with the truth. You see
Yeah.
that the truth will be revealed in time. That we have to take time to understand that. And she's standing on top of all of the vices, these different
Mm.
vices. So one of them's greed, and there's some other ones. And it's hard to see, but there's a couple of little cherubs that are bringing her armor in the background. It's a very, we don't have time to spend all the night on this, but it is a fascinating painting.
I'll have a link to the full image either on the website or just to the Wikipedia page of the photo, so you
Mm,
guys can peruse at your leisure.
so good. I love it. I'm so upset that I never got to get to any of this. In my presentation, I was like, I could spend the entire time just talking about the painting. Like on the tree metaphor, I have this picture of this is Yggdrasil by Finnur Magnusson, which is another great representation of all of reality. It's the world tree and all this from Norse mythology,
Yep.
and for a whole bunch of reasons, this nails it. I mean, like, wild. If you can read it, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I feel like most people have lost the capacity to read that kind of imagery.
Yeah, it helps to say it out loud sometimes. Like, just saying the old man has a hourglass, so that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
With wings on his head, right? It's like he's time. He's associated with time. He's associated with flying. Time flies. Like, just saying it out loud starts to reveal the meaning very quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think people look at art in a very materialistic way. Like we assume from a year 2020 or whatever 21st century viewpoint of art, we take our lens and apply it to that, and it's just like, well, it's just a whole bunch of people. I see people in armor. You don't see like the underlying message anymore, or
Yeah,
like
we don't know the meaning anymore. We
yeah,
don't know how to. And art is like almost nothing but meaning. It's like deep metaphorical meaning, but we've become so explicit and
yeah,
so um almost like mechanistic and commodified and boring. We had really hard time reading these.
yeah. So I think you're gonna probably blow some people's brains out when just by articulating that. I think it's gonna unlock
I've
some
got a
people's.
painting for all of these. Okay, so fairness and cheating. Equal proportion seems to be what actually makes up fairness. So there's what's called equity theory. A quote, a central axiom is that the ratio of net gains, outcome minus inputs, two inputs must be equal for all participants. So basically, the idea is that it's equal proportion there, as
Mhm.
opposed to just equality. However, Um, children prefer equality until puberty, after which they transition to a proportional perspective. So it seems that children are very much interested in having equity in the way by being equality of outcome. But as you become an adult, you recognize that it's about the proportion of work, that how much work I put in actually seems to have an effect on the way that people reason about what's fair. Which I would point out that means that suggests, it doesn't mean, but it suggests that the people who are interested in equity uh, in the um, equality of outcome are infantile, like in a technical
Mm.
sense, in that they think like children about these sorts of things. They have a undeveloped philosophy, right? They're children.
That's interesting.
So I don't know if this video will work. You'll have to tell me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can play it like
Oh,
this.
there it
Oh, here.
goes.
So we don't need to listen to what you're saying. All we need to see is this hilarious bit.
I think I've seen this before.
Will it play?
Yeah,
Here we
there
go.
it goes.
So they give her, I think she gives them a rock and they give it back, and then she gives them a cucumber. And so, okay, here you go. And then she ends up, here we go. She ends up giving one of them a grape instead of a cucumber. And then he gives it back, and then she gives the other monkey a cucumber instead of a grape. So they got different things. And he's pissed. I prefer the cucumber. Dude, it's amazing. Look at this. He is so fucking angry.
Oh my god, dude. I didn't see the part where he threw the piece of cucumber. Like,
He's
oh, he's still mad.
and she'll give him a cucumber again. He's like, "Oh, mother. Bitch."
Dude, you like see little humans like you it, like feels like an infant reacting,
Oh, it's
like a
hilarious.
toddler or
It's so
something.
funny. Yeah, it's really funny. So that's how deep that goes. I don't know what those are vervet monkeys or macaws or what, but I don't know when we differentiated from them, but we still get pissed.
We all behave that exact same way to some
So
degree.
fun.
It's hilarious to watch it throw it though. Like,
Oh yeah.
and
Everybody laughs the
the
first time they see that.
and the way he like looks away after he like realizes he didn't get something yet. He's like, "Oh, are you kidding me?"
All right. So, in some adaptive challenge for fairness and cheating is reap benefits of two-way partnerships, right? So that it's expanding beyond just parents. It's that it's like siblings, right? It's because when your parents have the reason that children, perhaps the reason that children like equity instead of this proportionality is they think that it's unfair is because your parents usually give both kids the same amount of food and you do whatever amount of work. It doesn't matter. You're kids. Like you're just all trying to survive. You just do whatever the hell food you get. As you become an adult, then you have to work for your food and you understand that you're not a charity case. You're not a child. So you're learning how to navigate that space and fairness is emerging out of this. Right. So reap benefits of two-way partnerships and original triggers, cheating, cooperation, deception. Current trigger, marital fidelity or broken rules, right? Characteristics, emotions, anger, gratitude,
Hmm.
guilt, relevant virtues, fairness, justice, trustworthiness. These are important things. Okay, loyalty and betrayal. So this is The Death of Caesar by Jean-Léon Jerome. So I really like a lot of the stuff he does, but this is pretty beautiful. So this is right after Caesar's been murdered. He's in the front, and you see everybody celebrating in the main focus of the painting. I'll go into this one a little bit less. Okay, chimpanzees patrol their borders, raid other troops, kill opponent troop members, and steal their females. Isn't that interesting? So chimps will go to war. And humans, so if you bride stealing was one of the biggest motivations for warfare back in the day. Think Helen of Troy,
Hmm.
right? They're going to take Helen. That's why the Trojan War happened. Right? And so we were still doing the chimp thing. And there was I think it was David Buss. I heard on a podcast a while back talking about how there were interviews with like Aboriginal tribes that had been largely isolated, and they were asked, "Why do they go to war? Why do you guys go to war?" And they're like, women, clearly, women and resources. And then they're like, why do you go to war? And they're like, freedom and all these abstract ideals and stuff. And all these Aboriginal tribes are like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? And then they're like, there's only one reason to go to war.
I mean, I think it kind of makes sense, right? If you're following, most tribes are probably around the Dunbar's number at most, right? Because if it gets any bigger than the 120 people or so, um, it probably fragments, and then those people have to leave, or some portion of those people leave to go form a new tribe, right? Just from a competitive resource and just a logical stability, I guess, if they're not agricultural. Um, but also, if you're living in a small group of families, you need new genes. Otherwise, things get squirrely real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Say that to all the royals.
Right, dude? Victorian England was weird.
So, therefore, warfare is older than agricultural and industrial society. Sorry, Rousseau, you're fucking wrong. Yeah. All right. So, Islamic tradition punishes apostates. The seventh circle of Dante's Inferno is reserved for traitors. Brutus and Judas are both there. Loyalty predicts partisanship, regardless of party identification. So there's a certain amount of loyalty here that people will be loyal to their political parties.
Hmm.
Shocker. If they can be loyal to a brand, they can be loyal to a political party. Adaptive challenge, forming cohesive coalitions, right? So we're expanding now even beyond the family domain. We're trying to get something like a cohesive group to work together. And that's why it's necessary, why loyalty is necessary. Original trigger, threat or challenge to group. Current trigger, sports teams, nations. Characteristic emotions, group pride, rage at traitors. Relevant virtues, loyalty, patriotism, and self-sacrifice. All right, authority and subversion. So one quick note, authority is not power, right? So a lot of people will confuse that. Relying on Franz de Waal, Haidt says, quote, but authority should not be confused with power. Even among chimpanzees where dominance hierarchies are indeed about raw power and the ability to inflict violence, the alpha male performs some socially beneficial functions. He resolves some disputes and suppresses much of the violent conflict that erupts when there is no clear alpha male. So the painting behind here is the signing of the Magna Carta by Albert Herder. And I think it's actually hung up in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I think you can go see it there.
That's
the state Supreme Court. And it's really interesting. I don't know how many people know the history of the Magna Carta, but it's actually an expression of this, of authority not being power, or at least a recognition of that. It's considered one of the most important legal documents in history. So the Great Charter is what that means. Was signed in 1215, by King John and his barons, who demanded that he obey his own damn laws because he was going around and causing a lot of problems and being a real tyrant and acting all like the alpha chimp, but not with the reciprocal part. He refused. He refused to sign it, so they captured London and forced him to negotiate. And then even the king was proven to need to subordinate to his own laws. Right, so there's something higher than the king is part of what recognizes it. It's something like an ideal,
That's
that
really
they've all
interesting.
agreed to. But that shows that even King John doesn't get to be a brutish tyrant, though he
Yeah.
can get away.
I mean, one of the things that I remember from Haidt, one of his favorite examples he likes to bring up is if you have a tyrant chimp leader, basically that tyrant chimp is going to have a bad day, either be sick or wounded or something, and then all the other chimps that are the subordinates, the male ones, I should be clear, will then take him out in very graphic ways. Let's and then you're no longer top dog anymore. So there's like even though you might be the alpha, there's still reason to be at least somewhat kind, or maybe not in chip society, but let others have some power.
Yeah, and we're much, much better at this. We
Yes.
sort of split the difference between bonobos who are just like free love, man. I can put it in a
Hippies.
real wild way.
Mhm.
The only sexual partner that's off limits is or sexual relationship that's off limits is the mother and her son when he's under 6 months of age. But once he gets older than that, it's all fair game. Everything is fair game with the bonobos.
Bonobos are wild.
Oh yeah, but we don't go that far in that direction either.
Yeah.
We're in a happy medium,
Thank God
which
for that.
probably part of why we're successful actually, is that we found a healthy medium here.
Mhm.
Anyway, okay. So you or how do you say you foreshadowed Dunbar.
Yeah, I did.
So a lot of authority stuff. You can think of it like a nested hierarchy that we've got building here. So mother, child, family, extended family, tribe, city, state, nation, civilization. Right? You can start to build out the size of your group, whatever that group is. Relative neocortex size predicts group size in primates. That's pretty interesting. That includes us.
Hmm.
Um, but that means that chimps who have a smaller neocortex have a smaller social group. So their Dunbar's number is smaller than us. First, it's 150. With concentric circles, like these intimacy circles. So 5 close friends, 15 good friends, those with whom you spend your Saturday evenings, maybe not the ones that you share all your life with. Then 50 regular friends, 150 people that you kind of keep track of, like close acquaintances. After that, they're Facebook friends, which means they mean nothing. Oh, I also want to. There's an old Bedouin saying you probably heard. That's me against my brother, me and my brother against my cousin, me, my brother, and cousin against the stranger.
Yep.
So you see the same dynamic
It's like
playing
me.
out.
I think the modern version is like me and my brother and my cousin against the world or something like that. But yeah, it shows a lot of like the tribal dynamics that form, especially that's playing out across like the quote unquote culture wars you see on Twitter or Facebook, things like that. I think they did a study too. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but they did a study about how many people have uh, Facebook friends that are around the Dunbar's number, like
Hmm.
or rather, how many of the like they do studies like confirming how many of those people you actually know, and then
Hmm.
they basically end up correlating to the Dunbar's number rather than
Not
like the 1,000 or whatever friends you have. It says you have. It says you're like, I only know about 100 and whatever.
yeah. And these aren't stable things either. It's not like you have 5 friends that will remain your closest 5 friends for eternity. It's kind of a cognitive load issue that you can only process so much information. So it might change. It's like one friend becomes part of the 15, while another one of those 15 ends up entering the 5-person circle for a few years, and then you move, and these things change.
Yeah, it's not static.
Okay, so a big part of this is serotonin. So getting a sense of how these larger coalitions start to form and how somebody rises up and down these hierarchies. Serotonin seems to act like a system that actually tracks where you are in this hierarchy. So lobsters who have lost a dominance encounter will refuse to fight for several days, taking on a losing mentality unless
Hmm.
given serotonin. So they inject them with serotonin and then they'll start fighting again. They get all confident and puffed up.
Hmm.
Prozac increases dominance status of vervet monkeys. That is a hilarious study where they had, at the same time they took out the alpha male monkey, they gave Prozac to one of the subordinate males, and then all the females notice that there's something different about him. They notice that there's something different first. Do you know what that is? Do you know what that is? That's like no, there's something different about you. Oh, haircut. It's like, nah, baby, I'm fine. All those moments in the movies where the guy gets the transformation, he puts on a suit, gets a haircut, like puffs himself up and walks into the office and people start to notice, right? His serotonin just went through the roof. It went through the roof. He behaves in a different way. People take notice, right? So that monkey becomes the top of the social dominance hierarchy when the other one is absent. And then what they do is they get rid of they stop giving him Prozac, and then they reintroduce the monkey that was the alpha before, and they go back to the way that they were because the
Wild.
one that was dominant probably had higher serotonin regardless.
Huh.
Fascinating.
That's
Yeah.
so wild. I can't believe they were able to pull that study off. I feel
Let's
like the review boards would not let that happen today.
Well, let's see, 91. I think with some of yeah, well, it depends.
They're a lot more strict than they were back then.
Macaw monkeys with depleted tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess eat more turkey. Uh,
You'll get
take great
sleepier.
risks. Isn't there tryptophan in bananas?
I think so.
Oh, you think I'd be doing all right, but here we are. I eat bananas every day. I'm sorry. Macaw monkeys with depleted tryptophan take greater risks in a gambling exercise.
Okay.
So what happens there is that when your body thinks that you're low in the social hierarchy, you've got nothing to lose, and so you take greater risks in order to on the off chance that the gamble pays off and you don't fall off the edge of the world here, right? Increased serotonin in humans increases pro-social behavior via harm inversion. So as opposed to the lobster who starts fighting when he gets all puffed up, humans who feel like they're in a good position in the social hierarchy will give back. They start doing an increase in social behavior where if we're low, then we start acting out of desperation. So homicide rates are correlated with income inequality.
Hmm.
And that is an income inequality in that it's that if you look at places where um there's a poor neighborhood and a poor neighborhood, the violence is not that bad. If there's a rich neighborhood, not that bad. But when there's poor neighborhood next to rich neighborhood,
Yeah.
violent.
It's the
Why?
gradient.
Because now all the stimuli that point out where you stand in the social hierarchy are way disproportionate.
Yeah.
Right? You have people, eating McDonald's and you watch that dude drive by in a Mercedes Benz or whatever, a Bentley, and now suddenly you feel like your brain, that part of your brain, the
Yeah.
serotonin system, is going, "Oh, you're fucked. You're fucked. You're fucked. Better do something quick. You better take a gamble, take a risk, do something crazy." Homicide rates go up.
It's just an evolved version of that monkey not getting the grape. That's all it is. It's the same shit.
No, that's a different foundation. So the laugh a different. That's the fairness one.
Uh,
It's more about status than it
uh,
is about fairness.
it's a signal of status within the hierarchy rather
Right.
than
And if well, you can imagine it's actually dangerous if you're low in status in
right.
our evolutionary past, because if you're really low in status, nobody's backing you up. You're not a part of a coalition. You're vulnerable.
Right. You're like one step away from being exiled, which means you're
Right.
alone, which means you die effectively.
That's exactly right. Which is why you're willing to take the risk, because it's either I die in the wilderness, abandoned, or I maybe die in a prison somewhere. But it might also work out. I might get something. I might, whatever it happens to be. Right.
Yeah.
And I think I forget who the author was, but I read a while back that um in some of these neighborhoods, going to prison becomes a status boost. Right? That it's a right. It's a toughness thing. It's showing off. So
Right.
doing something like this becomes
It
incentivized.
might be like in Hillbilly Elegy or something like that, where they talk about the honor culture side of this stuff that's prevalent in the South, but also inner cities.
Mm,
Because when you're in such low status areas of the world or in unequal areas of the world, the hierarchy that is common within like middle class or upper middle class disintegrates because it just doesn't exist because the system doesn't work there. So you fall back to older versions of human society, which is honor culture.
yeah, it seems to me like honor culture is a necessary thing when times are really bad.
Yeah.
Like in a sense, like you can't trust people to do the right thing, so you create a bottom up social, like moral enforcement mechanism in the form of honor, and then the honor culture emerges basically just to keep everyone in damn line,
Yeah.
and that's the only way you can hold it together.
It's a crude mechanism for order when you have very little.
But that might be in some sense like, unless you want things to get worse than they already are, you need to have a strong moral population that people need to be considering each other, that we need to be looking out for each other. Otherwise, things will degrade into potentially a more violent and, well, more like another culture.
Yeah, it reverts itself.
Huh. Okay, so rates of depression and anxiety in kids aged 12 to 17 have increased since 2011, 2012. Since the advent of social media, self-harm in girls aged 15 to 19 is up 62% since 2009, 189% in 10 to 14-year-old. 2010 to 2011, half of teenagers get a smartphone with access to social media. So, what is one of the things that social media might be doing? The same thing that the rich next to the poor neighborhood does. Shows you all these people who are better off than you, and now you think you're about to fall off the edge of the world.
Yep. It's the comparison is the thief of joy.
Can say nothing about the fact that depression is often treated with serotonergic um,
That's what,
based
yeah.
SSRIs, right? The
Yep.
serotonin reuptake inhibitor, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So they're using, so it's something like the assumption is something like depression is actually that you feel like a loser. And so we give you serotonin to artificially jump you up what your brain perceives where you are in the social hierarchy, and that helps treat the depression. Okay. In some, the adaptive challenges forge relationships within hierarchies, the original triggers, the signs of dominance and submission. Current trigger, bosses, respective professionals, characteristic emotions, respective fear, relevant virtues, obedience, and deference. All right, sanctity and degradation. So this is the allegory of chastity by Memling, 1475. So this is a medieval. Bursting into the Renaissance. So you can kind of tell the medieval stuff is really flat and lacks depth. But this is right when the Renaissance is beginning. So they're opening up, right? The Renaissance is about expansion. It's about opening your mind. And the art reflects that. Even McGilchrist notes this is that there's a depth that gets introduced, a depth of field, like that start to emerge in all the art. And this is like the beginning of that. You can see that there's a background that's opening up. It still has a medieval tinge to it in the way that people look and these sorts of things. But it definitely begins to right at the verge of the Renaissance emerge.
Yeah, you can see it even with the lion. The proportions are off, but it's still like trying to get more
Right.
three
Like the
dimensional.
foreground looks very medieval.
Yeah, but as you
The
go
back,
backward, it's
but they're starting to pull it back. They're opening their minds up. They're
huh.
beginning to go, whoa, look at all this. And of course, everybody's very thrilled about the Enlightenment. They think that the Enlightenment is the big deal. And look, we've systemized things. We created science and all this. But that was a systemizing of the discoveries that the Renaissance made. It's derivative as far as I'm concerned. The Enlightenment is derivative. So she's is chastity, and she's behind walls. She's protected, right? So and she's high. She's above everything, right? So there's something like purity is a put in that she's untouchable, but also sacred in that she's above everything. She's protected by these lions. Lions are it's a pride of lions. There's a certain element there. It's an interesting piece of work. Okay. Yeah, so sanctity and degradation, right? So I'm going to read to you something that will activate your underlying foundation. All right. In early 2001, Armin, I think it's Maves or pronouns, a German computer technician, posted an unusual advertisement on the web. Quote, looking for a well-built 21 to 30-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed. Hundreds of men responded by email, and Maves interviewed a few of them at his farmhouse. Bernd Brandis, a 43-year-old computer engineer, was the first respondent who didn't change his mind when he realized that Maves was not engaging in mere fantasy. On the evening of March 9th, the two men made a video to prove that Brandis fully consented to what was about to happen. Brandis then took some sleeping pills and alcohol. But he was still alert when Maves cut off Brandis' penis after being unable to bite it off, as Brandis had requested. Maves then sauteed the penis in a frying pan with wine and garlic. Brandis took a bite of it, then went off to the bathtub to bleed to death. A few hours later, Brandis was not yet dead, so Maves kissed him, stabbed him in the throat, and then hung the body on a meat hook to strip off the flesh. He was later arrested and convicted of manslaughter. Not murder, because the guy consented. And this is often used as an example to fuck with libertarians, by the way, because everyone consented. So consenting adults, they should be allowed to. But it is disgusting.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is disgusting.
Disturbing. I don't know. Oh, woo.
And disgust is the underlying thing that activates Sanctity and Degradation.
I can't
And
believe
that
people
comes
responded
from
after
the
all.
wars.
Okay.
We have, I know you know about this, but we
Yep.
have more food options, but many of those foods can be toxic, infected with microbes or parasites, and poisonous. More options, more risks. That's the problem that omnivores have. Disgust evolved to prepare us in lieu of experience for dangerous foods and circumstances. We wash and burn bodies. Both water and fire are symbolically cleansing. You'll notice that anytime somebody has a transformational experience in a movie, it rains, or they're on the beach, for
Hmm.
example, in The Whale at the end. Water is very much cleansing, it's purifying. So that's constantly, or you get a fire. That's a what's a usually a burning off. But something has to
Yeah.
be destroyed.
I mean, like fire is so prevalent in anything zombie related, right? Like burn the bodies constantly.
Yep, and that was a necessity that like that symbolism emerged from reality. Right, it's not
Mhm.
arbitrary. Just
I
say,
mean,
well,
anytime you hear about plagues, right? Like plagues, it's always you see either iconography or hear stories of, well, they just made fire pits and just threw bodies in.
yeah, and you'll get this kind of symbolism everywhere, like Cersei in Game of Thrones.
Mm.
Spoilers, everyone, in years, and you're not missing much. But blows up, uses this green fire to, just green is usually something like decaying, like unhealthy. This green fire to burn this like church and kill a whole bunch of people, right? So she's cleansing them. That's part of the idea. Abstracted to represent infectious ideas, practices, and people. So disgusting smells, rooms, and recollections, as well as disgusting videos, all increase the severity of moral judgments. It's mediated by your awareness of your own body,
Hmm.
whether you notice you're disgusted or you can sense that. Something like sensitivity. Disgusting films elicit harsher moral judgments than sad films or neutral films. Sadness elicited softer moral judgments than neutral or disgust. Might be a care thing going on there. Pattern deviation aversion, that same thing with the pattern that was broken, right? So this is me and you, we're not going to react that way. The broken pattern predicts greater condemnation of impurity.
Hmm.
That it's disgusting. Fix it. It's impure, right? You broke
Interesting.
your thing. And the alchemists considered gold to be valuable metal, not because it had its functions, but because it was pure, not solely right for its functional use. There's a
Yeah.
purity to gold, right? And that's part of what created its value.
Same thing with silver too, because silver is one of the only metals in the world that doesn't have it kills a lot of bacteria. That's
That's
why
pretty.
that's where the vampire thing I think comes from with like the silver stakes.
Oh yeah, huh, that makes sense. Yeah, or like the silver bullet with
Yep.
werewolves.
Yeah.
This whole thing.
Because
Yeah,
it
yeah,
supposedly is it has some sort of alchemical property that makes it, ward off evil in
yeah.
some.
You're purifying them
Yeah,
of
exactly.
of
Yep.
their possession, right? Hmm. That's interesting. I didn't put those two together. Infectious disease predicts democratization. So these people looked at a metric ton of countries and huge sample
Okay, so it's
sizes.
a meta
Right?
study.
It's giant, like like amounts of data. I have no idea how you what about this, but so infectious disease comes through, right? Infectious democratization, property rights, gender equality, sexual freedom. So with democratization, as infectious diseases increase, democratization decreases, which is to say, resources flow less freely.
Mm.
Right. So you put boundaries between you and other things, right? That's part of what disgust is, as opposed to fear. Fear is very different than disgust. Disgust is get it away from me. Right? It's like quick, get it away.
Yeah.
And so what's happening there is um p- it's the other becomes something to get away from. Property rights, more disease, less property rights. Everybody hoards their own thing and you don't give out property to other people so much. Gender equality, more disease, less gender equality. Sexual freedom, same thing, less sexual freedom. That's not surprising.
No.
STDs
Yeah.
are, in fact, a disease and are disgusting in that sense, and they trigger disgust, and it's a very direct applicability to it. So you
Man,
can
it's
see the symbolism of virginality being pure, making
mhm.
literal, and that if you are a virgin, you don't have a sexually transmitted disease unless you somehow got it from your parents, right?
Yeah.
You can see where the purity idea with this kind of
Man,
thing.
it's really interesting just thinking about these like 5 points in relation to the last couple of years because it's like, damn, we reacted very much the same.
Oh yeah, right. People, and I know it'll actually predict greater increases in. There'll be people be vote more conservatively.
Mm, that
So
doesn't
a
surprise
disease
me.
comes through, and people start to vote conservatively because it's something like conservatives actually represent that moral foundation better. I'll get to actually some of the differences in the political views later. Um, Last point on the sexual freedom issue, there was a marked increase in infectious disease in the US and Britain during the 1960s and 70s. So the sexual revolution. So that's pretty interesting. Increase or decrease in diseases. Right. So there's a decrease in disease around everyone. And then suddenly there's a sexual revolution. So things become
Mm,
more open and sexually free when things are healthy. People are
yeah, that's
like,
not
everything's
surprising.
good. Let's get after it. Woo.
Yeah.
You, you watch the next decade, guarantee you, it's already beginning, guarantee you less sexual freedom. This,
Hmm.
the Tinder world, these things are going to die off.
Oh yeah, there's lots of problems with that. I've been listening to tons of podcasts on the deterioration between, I mean, just I don't want to call it sexual relationships, but just the divide between status in men and women that's
Mm.
forming over the last like 20, 30 years. And it's,
In the sexual realm.
yeah, just in the sexual realm, but like educational attainment and then the
Oh, yeah.
hierarchies that develop between men and women, like what do women look for as they become more successful in the workplace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like totally derails the conversation we're having right now, but definitely what I want to have at least some point in later this year because I think it's really fascinating to see the societal shifts that are happening with the women becoming more and more the breadwinners slash attaining higher levels of achievement than ever thought possible historically.
Yeah. I heard that. Well, I wonder if it's largely white women that are becoming professionals. I
Mm,
suspect that a bunch of them will end up not married, or in failed marriages, so divorced, and that many men will end up going to, I suspect, Hispanic women because the population of Hispanic women coming up is growing. Some number of them, you might find a more traditional culture the men are interested in instead of dealing with the professional women, as well as they won't be the breadwinners.
that's
That they
that.
won't have been brought into
Ah,
I don't think that the Hispanic women that are coming in will have been brought so quickly into the professional pipeline
right.
in order to make more money than the men who so the men are more interested in selecting them.
Yeah, that
So you
makes
have a whole bunch of guys with immigrant wives, and then a whole bunch of very lonely professional women.
damn. That's a fascinating theory. I haven't heard that yet before, but just from my what I've read and listened to on this, that checks out.
I would totally buy that. I mean, I'm hypothesizing here
Right.
on the fly.
No, but I think you're onto something there, especially because, like, coming from an immigrant mentality, that means you're having a less well developed liberal democratic viewpoint that most educated women have here in the United States. Like, obviously, this is all based off of the United States, and you're probably coming from an upper middle class or middle class family, and this is in the water we drink effectively here. So, of course, you're gonna have a certain idea of what it means to be a woman. That's probably I'm a boss bitch or whatever you want to call it. Um, and you just don't want to settle, right? And this is no critique on individuals here. This is just looking at how society is going to play out in the next 20, 30 years.
Right. Yeah. I I really think that it's gonna push in that direction. It probably already is.
Oh, I think it's The
like
course
in the
correction will
woke
be our kids. You know what I mean?
so there's a poll a while back. I think it was either in the Atlantic or the Washington Post. This is when I was still in Michigan. It was asking different demographic groups if political correctness had gone too far. And the only group that said that it didn't, the only group was overeducated rich white women. So these professional women, right, that have adopted this attitude that includes the idea that men are oppressive, patriarchal, whatever. I think men are sick and tired of that. So at the same time that they're being incentivized to go to immigrant women who aren't making more money than them, those women are also not indoctrinated into the woke culture. So they're being, at the same time, they're being drawn to those women. They're being pushed from behind by these women that don't fucking
Yeah.
like them
Well, they're being
because
not
they're
even
drawn.
being pushed from behind. They're almost being kicked in the ass and say, "See you later."
And well, those women will get their, really, they will get exactly what they asked for, which is that they will be alone.
Yeah, and then they'll
Be alone.
they might realize too late that, oh wait, I wanted to have a family or whatever that looked like for you, and now you're 45 and you've got everything you wanted except that one last thing.
It's sad.
It really
It's
is.
actually
I
pretty
I'm I don't take I don't take any joy in saying that because I think people are being sold half a bill of goods when they're being told you can go be successful and make six figures or whatever it is that you want to make as a successful business person or whatever. But I think we should be asking people, what do you really want? Not what is society looking at you saying, well, women really want this, because I don't know if that's really
No,
something.
it's a bunch of bullshit. They've been told something. They've been so here's the thing. A bunch of the second wave leaders of the second wave feminist movement had were lesbians or had horrible relationships with men. I mean, would openly mention this horrible relationships with men. And this bled into the philosophies that drove this idea that no, you don't need no man,
Hmm.
and then you should be a professional, right? But this is coming from people who are having horrible relationships. What about the people who could have good relationships?
Right.
Why did we push them in that direction?
It's like, what are you selecting for from the theorists, right? Like, if all you're seeing is these bad examples, of course that
It,
gets baked into the theory. Instead, you
yeah,
needed someone who was of that same second wave feminist generation to push back and say, well, you guys say this, but also look at this example. Maybe it's not their life specifically, but someone should have gone and done that research and say, is there a healthy relationships being had? Because it's not all bad, right? Like if you blink at the situation, you're missing half of the story.
it's just it's like okay, so we had a philosophy come up out of women who don't have either good or don't have relationships with men who say that that you should have professional lives as women. Women bought that, are very unhappy, some of the most unhappy people in the really in the United States. If you look at the stats on this, the
Really?
least happy demographic are these professional women,
Hmm.
and they become unhappy. They look for justification for their unhappiness. They're provided a new philosophy in the form of wokeism, that says that the reason that you're unhappy, right? We've got your answer. We have your solution. We know why you're unhappy. It's because of power and privilege and because of the patriarchy, which it will only compound the problem. It's a way of doubling down on the initial mistake. And the solution would be to have to be humble and to recognize that, and just to be honest, you really think you're going to get all your happiness from a job? It's like, no, we get our
Yeah.
happiness and our meaning in life. There's research on that too, from our connections with other human beings, right? From our deep relationships.
Yep.
Why do you think you would get it from your job? The reason you're unhappy isn't because of the patriarchy. The reason you're unhappy is because you went into the professional realm where there's nothing meaningful for you. And that's it. You could be getting it from relationships, but that's, now the whole thing is messed up for other reasons.
Right. And then the flywheel breaks and then you loft trying to figure out what the fuck went wrong. Um,
Yeah.
we totally tangented here, but just as a closing note, there's a book related to this called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. I sent you a podcast on this.
Uh,
I'll put it in the show notes, but basically this guy, just in background, he's a hedge fund oil trader type guy. So he like deals with oil futures, predicting how much oil is going to be costing in the future and then make a bunch of money predicting that accurately. But this guy wrote a book basically optimizing for fulfillment in your life or like happiness. Basically, you shouldn't have a bank account with a whole bunch of zeros at the end of your life. What you should be doing is figuring out how to use that money when your body is able and you have the time to enjoy your time here with the people you love or doing the things you love at the very least, so that you end up using up as much of your wealth as possible, because you might as well go do those things now while you have the able body to do it, instead of being like, oh well, I wait until I'm 50 or 60 years old after I've worked my ass off to be successful. This is not men, women. This is anybody. I think should really take this to heart. But it's like, go do the things now when you can, because you'll get a lot more value with the people you care about now than by the time you're dead, and then you can't really enjoy it because your back's fucked up or whatever. like
Sure.
it's like delaying gratification too far, because it's like, well, I've got all this money and now I can't do anything with it. It's like,
Yeah.
congrats, I guess.
Right. Not about the money. It's about your building relationships,
Yeah.
particularly time of chaos where you're going to need a community to survive difficult times. Right. Like being isolated and in bad times is a very bad thing. Here. Anyway, so moving on with the sanctity degradation thing, here's some examples from religious thought. So this is from Indus University in India. Quote, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, I think I said that, describe Shaucha as Shaucha is that from which there arises dislike, i.e., dispassion towards one's body and detachment towards contact with others. Shaucha gives rise to purity of mind, contentment, one pointedness, conquest of the senses, and competency to attain self realization. Right, so there's all these purity of things, right? Contentment. There's purity of ideals in some sense. Then it goes on to say that the same word, chaucha, of a utensil may refer to whether it's clean or dirty. Right. So you get this idea that there's a very literal sense, but there's also a metaphorical sense of this, that all these high ideals are emerging out of the very concrete, pure, impure utensil, right? Clean, unclean. So this is from Eric Neumann in the Origins and History of Consciousness. Quote, the essence of the mythological canon of the hero redeemer is that he is fatherless or motherless, that one of the parents is often divine, and the hero's mother is frequently the mother goddess herself, or else betrothed to a god. These mothers are virgin mothers. As everywhere in the ancient world, virginity simply means not belonging to any man personally.
Hmm.
Virginity is in essence sacred, not because it is a state of physical inviolateness, but because it is a state of psychic openness to God. The hero's birth is expressly attributed to a virgin. So I
Hmm.
think he's wrong. He's half wrong. It's in part about physical inviolateness. It's that, like I said before, if you're a virgin, you don't have an STD. So there's a very concrete version of purity from not having sex. But the more abstract sense is the idea of being pure and married only to your ideals, right? That the virgin mother gives birth to a God's son because she is, in some sense, unified with a God, with an ideal.
Hmm.
Right? She is pure in heart and mind, purely a representative of that God. So you can see again, it's a strange abstractness, this purity of self and being, that you can have a virginal mother who gives birth to a son.
It
And
sounds
in fact,
very aspirational.
it is. And it's really interesting because it actually suggests that, in fact, all of these cultures that have this story, so it's all over the place. So a whole bunch of different cultures came to the same conclusion, which was that the woman who is wholly committed, right, independent of anything else, right? She's virgin. She's not dependent on any man. She's independent, right? She's not tied to anything other than a marriage like unity and commitment to our ideals, is the type of woman who gives birth to a hero,
Hmm.
right? So it tells you
That's
something that's
fascinating. I
fascinating.
mean, it's fascinating. I don't know why I was just thinking this, but I'm like, dude, it's Anakin Skywalker. It's Darth Vader. Because Darth Vader's in the story at least, his mother was a virgin because when Qui-Gon asked her, she's like, "Who's the father?" And he's like, "Don't know,"
Yep.
and
Right.
then it's like he becomes this archetypal hero, obviously fallen hero at some point, but then redeems himself, right? Like there it is, hero redeemer. Like,
The mother of Romulus and Remus.
yeah,
Romulus becomes the founder of Rome, right?
I mean Jesus,
Yeah, Jesus, the obvious one.
the obvious
But
most.
this is you learn the father of Romulus is Ares.
Oh wow.
So the father of Rome is war. That tells you something about their fucking culture, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean they're one of the most warfaring modern civilizations ever,
Oh,
or
it's wild.
or
Yeah, you
ancient.
can learn a lot. But the father of the West is Yahweh, and the name of that God is I am. And so it's the oneness, the idea of the unity of all things,
Hmm, that sounds
right?
very
So
Buddhist.
her commitment to whatever reality is as such, right? This kind of to the grand, the majesty of all this is what brought Jesus into being. So that's an interesting one. You can understand a lot, knowing what that dynamic is, what that like being able to read that bit is very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, moving forward. In summary, quote, the Sanctity Foundation makes it easy for us to regard something as untouchable, both in a bad way, because something is so dirty or polluted that we stay away, and in a good way, because something is so hallowed or sacred that we want to protect it from desecration. The adaptive challenge is avoided contamination, original trigger waste products, diseased people. So you get lepers, all the moral things around lepers, for example. Current trigger taboo ideas, communism, racism. Characteristic emotions, disgust. Relevant virtues, temperance, chastity, piety, cleanliness. All right, so here's a candidate. There's one they're exploring, could be the sixth foundation, which is liberty and oppression. Reactions to oppression. Alpha chimps can be ganged up on by subordinates and killed, right? So that when the oppressor comes, there's a countervailing moral foundation that is activated. And that's liberty, development. The advent of weaponry in particular allowed for subordinate members of a hierarchy the ability to contend with troop leaders on a more equal playing field. This incentivized leaders to attend to the needs of the troop, to be a proper authority. Today, it's triggered by feelings of oppression or bullying associated with reactance, or when you are told you cannot do something and want to do it more. That feeling. Oh, fuck you. I am going to do that. It's interesting. It's funny to me because the point about the evolution of weaponry makes me think that any feminist who wants the abolishment of gun rights, is very confused because all the male dominance and strength and muscles will do nothing for a man if she has guns. That the
If you
weaponry
know
is
how
the
to
brain.
use it.
Yeah. And you know how right. And you know how to use it. Right. It's like if you want the equality between the sexes, arm women.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna be honest too, right now, even if you try to ban guns, they're not going away. Like it
Yeah,
just
yeah.
just Google ghost guns. Dude, 3D printed guns are a business. And it's really crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we can't even get fentanyl out of the States. How the hell are we gonna right. Anyway,
Tangent,
that's another
but I'm
discussion.
just giving people a thing to go explore if they're really interested in that.
Not that now I have to put all the addendums. Not that there aren't sensible gun control laws that you can have this. I understand. It's again, I'm not a give
This
guns to children
this is not a
maniac.
two-way argument. We're just talking about
No.
we have to do disclaimers.
Okay, so on to film and moral foundation. So this is kind of a particular part for my lab. And one of the things that we're interested in. So some questions that you could ask. Do morally charged films trigger particular moral responses? The answer is yes. right? We know that from the disgusting videos
Mm.
and people having harder judgments. Do people rely on some moral foundations more than others? Also, yes, we know that. And on the top, what conservatives rely more on. So liberals rely almost exclusively on harm and fairness, where conservatives rely actually on all of the foundations. Is not represented well here, but all the foundations, but particularly on in-group loyalty, authority, and purity. Right. So there's a difference in which foundations they're using. So the gray bar that you see is the difference between this is what actual liberals and conservatives rate. So you give them this questionnaire. How much do you care about these particular foundations? It's worded way different, but so that the gray bar, the pure gray bar, shows what conservatives say about themselves or liberals say about themselves, what they actually care about. Okay. The stripe bar is the most extreme versions of this. So the most extreme conservatives and the most extreme liberals rely on that foundation to that degree. So more, shocker. But they also had conservatives rate pretend to be a liberal and then answer the questionnaire. How do you think a liberal would answer this? And they had liberals pretend to be conservatives and ask this. And the white bar indicates how that played out. So both sides think the other side is way more extreme than even the most extreme members of that particular group. So
Oh,
it tells you how
fantastic.
about each other. I thought that's fucking hilarious.
Oh,
It's like, shocker. We're not as crazy as we all think that the other person is.
dude, it's just Twitter. It's just Twitter. Just oh, it's so fucking funny. It's like if you actually get people to talk to each other, you realize neither of you really are that crazy. I mean, you might be, but like not really. Like the average person is not that crazy.
Not that great. So there's a problem still. If moral reasoning is a post hoc justification designed to convince others, emerged from past ecological conditions, then is there a form of moral reasoning that accounts for the present conditions of one's life? In other words, is there an update mechanism for these foundational systems? Like, how is there progress? If we're all just justifying innate structures, then the only way that those innate structures change is through long periods of evolutionary time. And so we wouldn't expect to see moral progress really much at all, except for over extremely long lengths of time. So is there something that accounts for this? I don't know. Let's explore.
Welcome. Step through the portal, please.
Quote, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived. So,
I love this quote so much.
so right?
It says so much.
So wisdom. How does wisdom come about? So Webster came up with a model to try to define wisdom, and this is very much on the edge. And so it's people, it's not really clear what wisdom means, but a lot of people are talking. So I'm actually going to go through this at a little bit different thing. So it's a bit of a meaning making process. First, his model is the hero model, HEROE. I'm going to begin with the first E, which is experience. Critical life experience occurs. Something difficult happens and you have to think it through, right? This is a disruptive event, right? It might be meaning violation, something I've read about, or trauma. Then you reminisce and reflect. So that's R. This is a meaning making. It's not rumination, it's meaning making. That you actually look at what happened and try to make sense of it. You'd be open to experience. There's a openness element here. As personality trait, openness breaks down into openness to experience and openness to ideas or intellect. It allows individuals to approach novel experiences and ideas as a potential means of growth, right? To engage with a new way, a new perspective on the thing that happened to them as they reflect in order to make sense out of this thing. Emotional regulation. This allows for one to contend with the difficulty of their experience without being overwhelmed by the emotional state, allowing for Freudian catharsis as opposed to colloquial catharsis.
Hmm.
The colloquial version is the idea of venting. Just let your emotions take you over and they all come out. Where the Freudian sense was rather that it's putting words to emotions. It's identifying, it's a process of identifying how you feel and understanding how you felt, even in that circumstance. When you reminisce,
Hmm.
right, take a new perspective on that critical life experience, you can identify the emotions you felt in the circumstances. And out of that emerges humor. That you can be, these people are humorous. Is not taking oneself too seriously and seeing the irony in situations. Let's wise people
Mm.
use humor adaptively. So wise humor is non-defensive and characterized by playfulness, mature coping skills, pro-social bonding, and humility. If they're able to look at the circumstances and go, man, and laugh about it. You go, yeah, that was really hard. And I ended up in that because I was stupid. And to be playful, not defensive humor where you're on the attack, but to laugh about.
This is fascinating. I mean, I'm like hearing you explain this, and I'm like, what the? I'm like never heard this before, and I'm like, wow, like
Right? It's that wisdom is something that emerges out of the meaning making process. Is
yeah,
that you are forced to take a new perspective on something because came colliding into some tragic event, right? You were forced to take whatever I was doing before led me here. So I can't keep thinking like what led me to this moment. I need to broaden out. I need to be willing first to look back at the event, try to make sense out of it. I need to open myself up to new perspectives so that I can see where I went wrong, so I can see what happens. I need to be able to not be captured by every emotion that comes my way, but instead be able to identify the pieces of that experience. And then out of that, I can be humorous. I can laugh about it. I can joyfully play my way through. I can dance through a minefield
that's a great way to put it.
and notice that it's actually the hero's journey.
Hmm.
So you have an equilibrated state. And then that's the part one. So everything, there's an equilibrium in your life and things you found a balance. Something, a disruptive event, a critical life event comes in, right? So, or not Anakin, Luke's aunt and uncle are killed, right? Disruptive event. You're forced into a hero's journey or to make sense of this. So you reflect and reminisce. Now you can look back, right? So that's part of it. You're mining for wisdom is what you're doing there. You're looking for a lesson to learn. You get wisdom. And I think that that this process doesn't end with deriving wisdom from it exactly. It seems that um, why? How would you say that? A lot of meaning in life comes from these pro-social things. It's going back to the community, re-embedding yourself into that community, having learned a lesson, and providing that lesson to the next generation that produces for you now a sense of meaning in your life, right? And now you become the wizened old man who tells the story and the lesson to your tribe who are sitting around the campfire learning from you. And that's how we get moral progress, is that you have a moral imperative to make meaning out of your trauma
Hmm.
because you need to bring that back to your community so we don't keep making the same mistake. Other people will suffer in the same way you did unless you can make meaning out of it and provide them with that lesson so that they can avoid it. You are morally obligated for those people to do this. And it's the way in which moral progress occurs on a civilizational scale. So you have an obligation to the individuals around your local community and the progression of the human species at large. It's not a fair moral obligation. Is it fair that you have to do this? But you are obligated.
Hmm.
Take that burden on. It's like you didn't ask for it, but it's yours. Okay. Oh, I kind of went through a lot of this already. This is interesting though. So the search for meaning and meaning in life are associated with wisdom. I think that's probably the giving the wisdom back to your community. But also it's a particular kind of meaning making, redemptive processing versus exploratory processing. Redemptive processing is quote, how positively or negatively an individual interpreted the long-term emotional impact of a traumatic life event. This is the happy ending approach. It's the meaning they made out of it was, oh well, it all worked out in the end.
Mm. All right, they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah, but it's not a lesson. It's just well, I don't feel bad anymore.
Yeah,
The exploratory process is a highly reflective process through which individuals deepen their self or life insight by constructing meaning surrounding a specific life event. This predicts wisdom. This is the openness. You're exploring the event, a willingness to look for the lesson. That's where you get the wisdom from. You can't just let it fade away into the past and suddenly you don't feel so bad anymore. Like, look for the lesson. So, meaning making tools. So, are psychedelics? This is a question mark. There's some research happening about that now. Expressive writing, Pennebaker, 1999. So, if you write for 4 days, 15 minutes each day about an experience that still causes an emotional reaction in you, right? So, if you think about some breakup or who knows, some trauma in your past, and you write about for 4 days, you'll actually have physiologically, uh, you'll be physiologically better. You'll go to the hospital less. You'll also, there will be immune system markers in your blood tests that will positively increase. So
that's
there,
wild.
it's probably that the cortisol decreases, and then that um, stops poisoning you, and everything else improves. So there, you will have a physiological reaction to making meaning out of these things. So not only will you be mentally better, you'll be physically better. One of the indicators in writing is something like generic use. Generic language is a meaning making marker, cognitive words, blah, blah, blah. You know, like self transcendence, I think, is part of this openness to some degree. This is a zooming out beyond yourself. I actually suspect that it's um, really that's what it is that you're taking on the perspective of larger and larger groups, and that the ultimate form of this is something like a complete self transcendence where you identify as everything the universe is such, and you'll have right. So Jesus is the Son of God, right? And God is everything in some sense. So he's a representative of everything. The Buddha would talk about how we're all one. It's all one thing. Um, Self transcendence predicts wise reasoning. One of the three studies the authors confirmed the association between sweeping videos of nature, a sensation of awe, and used this to elicit responses in participants, and they were more wise. They did more wise reasoning. Right? Because you see a broader perspective when you look out at nature. You see things as living, as living and moving and breathing. You're part of this cycle. Think of a lot of this is the reconciliatory process. I'm not gonna talk about this just because it's really technical. Okay, we can talk about happiness versus meaning. People rate benefits to society as being more meaningful than benefits to others, or benefits to oneself, excuse me, when evaluating meaningfulness of jobs, other people's lives, and giving advice about how to increase meaning. Benefits to the self are rated as being happier or similarly happy compared to benefits to society, which is to say that if you're this is reinforcing this idea that you return to your community and that's where you get your meaning from. When you go to help society, you get more meaning. If you go to help yourself, you get happiness. I wonder sometimes if life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness was a mistake and that it, how would you say, it directed our attention for the last 260 something years in the wrong direction.
It should have been life, liberty, and meaning.
In the
Yeah,
liberty and pursuit of meaning.
that's interesting.
Happiness is too individualistic. Now, there's a problem with being individualistic to some degree,
Right.
but we're at the place now where we're atomized. And I live in an apartment by myself and in a box ordered around other boxes inside of a box, inside of a grid where other boxes are. And everything is a box. Everything is a line drawn around. It. Everything is atomized. Everything is categorized. Everyone has become an individual, not a real individual where you are a sincere or organic, authentic expression of yourself. It's just you're isolated. And I think that's where happiness might lead, seemingly. It's the wrong value. The use of wisdom and wise reasoning to serve the community may increase meaning in life. We expect that if you use wisdom acquired in the process to serve your community, you will experience greater meaning. There we go. The end.
We've done it. Fascinating. Good stuff.
So it seems to me that a constantly in flux reality, a coincidence of opposites, coincidentia oppositorum, leads to a process ontology, leads to a pragmatic definition of truth and of goodness. That those good things that were most constant across great expanses of time were adapted to, creating moral foundations out of which our moral reasoning emerges, which is updated on an individual and societal level by addressing your problems, by encountering a problem, reminiscing, understanding those problems, being open to new perspectives, um, being emotionally regulatory, by um, being humorous and light and driving wisdom, and then greater meaning in your life comes from taking that wisdom that you learned and giving it back to your community so that they can avoid the problems that you had, and we all update and move into the future as a result. And that high point is moral, is the place I should be looking now for moral reasoning.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say on this topic, and I'm sure this is not the first nor the last time we'll be covering this because, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is right up our alley. Like both me and um,
This is a rich topic.
yeah. I mean, I have so much to say, but I'm canning it for right now. But I also want to talk to you about it offline because I have parallels here.
Mhm.
It's kind of wild, and I don't want to say it now because I want to be able to talk about it in a better way.
Yeah.
Because it's so new, just given the state of. I mean, this just feels like we're hitting the gas on something, and I'm really excited to keep exploring effectively.
This is the kind of research I'm really excited about, is the wisdom stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah,
I'm
this is dope.
stoked.
I'm excited to see where it goes, and I mean, this. I honestly think this kind of PowerPoint is something that people are sorely lacking. Um,
Mm.
I honestly don't see this kind of information really anywhere, unless you know a guy who's Jonathan Haidt. Obviously, is one of the big ones. Peterson to some degree kind of does this stuff too, but outside of those two guys, maybe John Vervaeke does some meaning making stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, like those three are the kind of the big guys in this space right now, at least from like a public persona standpoint. But I mean, those guys are busy, and they have their own pet projects. I don't really know who the who else does this stuff. They're not trapped behind a lab doing reports. Just over and over again. So it's cool to see that. I mean, at least you are the one who have kind of taken it upon yourself to unpack this stuff.
I'm trying.
Yeah, and that's all you can hope to do, right? Well, everyone, I'm sure if there's comments or things we missed, I really would love to hear it, to be totally honest. Or if there's things we can explore in other detail, I would also love to hear that as well. So let us know. I mean, this was a lot of material, and I mean, it was effective a lecture. So just any and all feedback is totally wanted, and will just help us get better at doing this. I don't see this really going away, and we'll be back for more in the not too distant future.
Adios.